Starting off with the first one, and that's Adam as the first man. Adam's role as the father of the human race is outlined in the Quran, where he's given the name by God known as Adam-i-Safi, or the chosen one. Now in Genesis 2 in the Bible, God forms Adam out of the dust of the ground and breathed into him the breath of life, and he came to life. So in both Genesis and the Quran, Adam and his wife were expelled from the Garden of Eden for eating the forbidden fruit of the tree, where God was like, hey, don't eat from that tree, and they did it, so they got kicked out of the garden. The next similarity is the prophecies. So the Quran and the Bible aren't just books that tell historic accounts and offer guidelines for human living, but they both all contain prophecies of future events, some of which were events that happened already in the past. Others are for days to come, like the Judgment Day, the resurrection. Both the Bible and the Quran make the claim of being from God, and Christians and Muslims believe that only God knows the future, and he wants to guide human beings and prepare us for future events, which is why naturally prophecies are a major component in the two holy books. Both books also mention heaven. So although in the Bible the term heaven can also be used for the sky as well as for outer space, heaven is also described in the Bible as a real place where the righteous people of God will eventually live one day. And in fact, heaven is where God and the angels live now. Muslims, they strive to live a life of service to Allah with the ultimate goal of being admitted to heaven, or Jannah. All Muslims hope to spend their eternal lives in heaven, also referred to as paradise. You've probably heard that term. It's a place of beauty beyond what anyone can imagine. The Quran also compares heaven to being a lush garden, and in the Bible there are descriptions like having streets of gold as well as having many mansions. Those are all terms used to describe what heaven is going to be like. We got angels up next. So these are powerful and bright beings that can travel super fast. The Quran describes them as being Allah's creations who carry out duties and assignments, all in complete obedience, like recording every single word and deed that people do, as well as protecting us in the sense of having a guardian angel, as well as they deliver divine messages to prophets and anyone else who God sees fit. Angels are described in the exact same way in the Bible, and they're given similar roles like delivering divine messages to people such as Mary, the mother of Jesus, as well as Zachariah, the father of John the Baptist. Now let's talk about the pork prohibition, and I got some verses that I quote from. So the Old Testament of the Bible, it states in Deuteronomy 14 verses 8, "The pig is unclean to you, because though it has a division in the horn of its foot, its food does not come back. Their flesh may not be used for food, or their dead bodies touched by you." And in the Quran, in Surah number 5 verse 3, it says, "Forbidden to you is that which dies of itself, and the blood and the flesh of swine." So these commands were given to safeguard people from diseases that could arise from eating dead swine, although there are now varying beliefs about the pork prohibition in the Bible and the Quran due to modern methods of cleaning and preparing foods now. This is a similarity that many people make a reference to. At number 5, we have God as the only deity. So you'll find this belief throughout both books. In the Quran, Surah 2 verses 255, it says, "Allah, none has the right to be worshipped but He, the ever-living, the one who sustains and protects all that exists. Neither slumber nor sleep overtakes Him. To Him belongs whatever is in heaven and whatever is on earth." Now in the New Testament of the Bible, in the book of Mark, chapter 12 verses 20 to 30, it says, "Which commandment is most important of all?" And Jesus replied, "The most important one is this. Listen, O Israel, the Lord our God is the only Lord. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength." There's also a big similarity with the prophets. So here are some of the prophets who are mentioned in the Quran and the Bible, and I'll be using the English translation of each name for the sake of time. In both books, we see prophets like Adam, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, Solomon, Elijah, Jonah, Zechariah, as well as John the Baptist. Now I did a video about 10 prophets who are mentioned in both the Quran and the Bible, and I go into a whole lot more detail about the different background stories of the prophets. So I'll have a link to that video down below in the description section, and I highly recommend you check it out after this episode. Fasting comes in at number 3. 3. So the books on several occasions make a link between fasting and spiritual connection with God. Specifically in the Bible, it's alluded to that removing certain evil spirits that possess a person can only be done through fasting. So there's a quote from the Gospel of Matthew chapter 17 verse 21, and it says this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. Now those are the words of Jesus when he was talking to his disciples when they couldn't cast out an evil spirit. Now in the Quran Surah 2 verses 183, it says, "You who believe, observing as Psalm, the fasting, is prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you, the Christians, the Jews, that you may become al-mutakun," which is pious. Now the second last similarity is prayers. So the need to conduct prayer is mentioned numerous times in the Quran. Allah says in the Quran, Surah 20 verses 14, "Verily, I, Allah, none has the right to be worshipped but I. So worship me and perform a salat," which is prayers, "for my remembrance." Now over in the Bible, it says in the book of Jeremiah 29 verse 12, and this is God speaking, "Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you." So Muslims perform their prayers 5 times daily, and in the Bible it outlines a principle that says to pray continuously, more specifically, pray without ceasing. That's in the New Testament. And the final similarity that I have for you guys in this episode is Jesus. So Jesus is mentioned in both of the holy books. The Quran illustrates Jesus as a prophet who's given a message to share with all the people on the world. Now while Jesus is recognized as the Son of God in the Bible, the Quran uses titles for Jesus, but not specifically the Son of God title. Titles like Messenger of God, Word of God, Son of Mary, and things like that can be found in both books. With that said, let's start off with the similar verse number 10 relating to one God. In Surah 2 verses 163, it says, "Your God is one. There is no God except him, the beneficent, the merciful." Now when you go over to the Bible in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 4, Deuteronomy is the last book in the Torah, or the first 5 books of the Bible. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one." The similar verse at number 9 deals with there being no God besides God. So when we look in the Quran in Surah 17 verses 22, we find a passage that says this, "Do not set up another God beside Allah and thus become censured and forsaken." Now in the Old Testament book of Exodus chapter 20 verses 3 to 4, we find a passage among the 10 commandments that says, "You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make unto yourself any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth." So we see both in the Quran and the Bible language that shows that it is forbidden for people to have any sort of God, regardless of what or who that God is, besides the actual God. Number 8 brings us passages relating to submitting to God and avoiding Satan. First off, when we look in the Quran, Surah 2 verses 208, it says, "O you who believe, submit yourself completely and do not follow the footsteps of Satan. Verily, he is to you a clear enemy." Now in the New Testament book of James chapter 4 verses 7 in the Bible, it says, "Submit yourself therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Verses about walking as servants of God come in at number 7. In Surah 25 verses 63 of the Quran, it says, "The servants of the most merciful are those who walk upon the earth with humility." Now in the book of Micah chapter 6 verses 8, the verse says, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justly, love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God?" So in the Quran, it makes a statement, and over in the Bible, it says it like in a question format. Very similar language both in the Quran and in the Bible. But moving on now to number 6, let's look at passages referring to inheriting the earth. So check this. In Surah 21 verses 105, the Quran says, "We have already written in the book after the remembrance that my righteous servants will inherit the earth." And we find pretty much the exact same language over in the Bible in the book of Matthew chapter 5 verses 5 to 6. It says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled." The verses at number 5 deal with adultery. So this is what the Quran says in Surah 17 verses 32. "Do not approach adultery. Verily it is ever immoral and an evil way." Now also part of the 10 commandments in the book of Exodus chapter 20 verses 14 in the Bible, it just simply says, "You shall not commit adultery." Fear of the Lord comes in at number 4. So now, by the way, I just got to clarify though that the fear of God in both the Quran and the Bible in this context does not mean to be afraid of God. Rather, it's an archaic term that means to revere God and have great respect for God. So I just want to clarify that before I share these passages. Now, the first passage I got to share is in the Quran, Surah 35, verses 28. It says, "Those who fear Allah among his servants are those who have knowledge." Now, check this. In the book of Proverbs, in the Old Testament of the Bible, Proverbs chapter 1 verses 7, it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge." Here we see fear, we see Lord/Allah, and knowledge all together in the same passage. Here we have another very similar verse dealing with praise to God. So when we look in the Quran in Surah 2 verses 255, this is what it says. "Allah, none has a right to be worshipped but He, the ever-living, the one who sustains and protects all that exists. Neither slumber nor sleep overtakes Him. To Him belongs whatever is in heaven and whatever is on the earth." Now, fast forward to the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, chapter 4, verses 11. We find this passage that says this, "You are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things. By your will they exist and came to be." There also is a passage in the Bible that does talk about God neither slumber nor sleep. I don't have it right now as I'm filming. I'll probably just pop it up on the screen. It should be like right here. So as you can see, it's pretty much the exact same language use. Let's talk about how to treat your parents at number 2. So in the Quran, Surah 17, verses 23 to 24, it says, "You shall be kind to your parents. If one or both of them live to their old age in your lifetime, you shall not say to them any word of contempt nor repel them, and you shall address them in kind words. You shall lower to them the wing of humility and prayer. O Lord, bestow on them your blessing, just as they cherished me when I was a little child." The similar passage in the Bible is found in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verses 12, and it's a lot shorter. It says, "Honor your father and your mother, so you may live long in the land that your Lord your God is giving you." So the similar idea of just treating your parents well. Parents sometimes can be just annoying, maybe seem like they're old-fashioned, but in any case, whether you follow the text in the Quran or you follow the Bible, or just in general, love mom and dad, be good to them. And finally, at number 1, let's look at 2 similar passages about taking God's name in vain. First up, in the Quran, Surah 2, verses 224, the passage says, "Do not use God's name in your oaths as an excuse to prevent you from dealing justly." So we see from that passage the idea that there is a way to misuse the name of God. Now, in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verses 7 in the Bible, we find a similar theme there. That passage says, "You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name." So of course we can make the assumption that if you can misuse the name, there's also right ways to use it, and misusing the name of God is strictly forbidden in the Bible and in the Quran. At number 10, we're starting off with the belief of God's foreknowledge. So in regards to God's power of foreknowledge, the Quran has this verse. In Surah 57, verses 22, it says, "No disaster strikes upon the earth or among yourselves, except that it is in a register before we bring it into being. Indeed, that for Allah is easy." And then when we look over in the Bible, we see in Isaiah chapter 42, verses 9, the following passage. "Behold, the former things have come to pass. Now I declare new things. Before they spring forth, I proclaim them to you." Number 9, we got to look at the prophethood of Jesus. So both Islam and Christianity believe in the prophethood of Jesus, and prophethood just means that they believe that Jesus was a prophet. And we can find these in the following verses. So starting off with the Quran in Surah 19, verses 29 to 32, it says, "So she pointed to him. They said, 'How can we speak to one who is in a cradle, a child?' Jesus said, 'Indeed, I am the servant of Allah. He has given me the scriptures and made me a prophet, and He has made me blessed wherever I am and has enjoined upon me prayer and zakah as long as I remain alive, and made me dutiful to my mother, and He has not made me a wretched tyrant.'" Now, over in the Bible, in the book of Matthew chapter 13, verses 57, we find a verse that says this, "And they took offense at him, but Jesus said to them, 'A prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home.'" Moving on now to the belief at number 8. Cain and Abel. This is a pretty interesting one. So in the Bible, Cain murders his brother Abel after God favors Abel's sacrifice above Cain's sacrifice. And this is found in Genesis chapter 4. Then in the Quran, pretty much the exact identical details are mentioned. And you can find the Quranic account in Surah chapter 5. And both the Quran and the Bible mention that the effects of murder after that time will be greatly increased. So this is another pretty interesting similarity that we find in both the Quran and the Bible, that earth and heaven were a joint entity and later God separated them. And it's mentioned specifically in Genesis chapter 1 verses 6 to 10 in the Bible, and that goes as follows. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above the vault. And it was so. And God called the vault sky. Some translations say heaven. And there was the evening and there was the morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place and let dry ground appear." And it was so. And God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. Now, the similar belief in the Quran is found in Surah 21 verses 30 to 32. And that goes as follows: "Have those who disbelieved not considered that the heavens and the earth were a joint entity, and we separated them and made from water every living thing? Then will they not believe? And we placed within the earth firmly set mountains, lest it should shift with them. And we made therein mountain passes as roads, that they might be guided. And we made the sky a protected ceiling, but they from its signs are turning away." Number 6 brings us to the belief of God being the only deity. I'm going to look at some verses on this topic from the Quran and the Bible. In the Quran, Surah 2 verses 255, this is what it says: "Allah, there is no deity except Him, the ever-living, the sustainer of all existence. Neither drowsiness overtakes Him, nor sleep. To Him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. Who is it that can intercede with Him except by His permission? He knows what is presently before them and what will be after them, and they encompass not a thing of His knowledge except for what He wills. His mercy extends over the heavens and the earth, and their preservation tires Him not. And He is the Most High, the Most Great." Pretty long passage there from the Quran, but over in the Bible, a little bit of a shorter passage in Mark chapter 12 verses 28 to 30. It says, "One of the teachers of law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, 'Of all the commandments, which is most important?' 'The most important one,' answered Jesus, 'is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love your Lord God with all your heart and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength." But for now, let's continue on with belief number 5, and that is the belief in angels. So the Quran and the Bible, they describe the angels as God's creations who carry out duties such as recording our words and deeds, as well as guarding people, and also bringing divine messages to prophets. And specifically in the Quran and the Bible, it mentions an angel communicating with Zechariah about the birth of his son. In the Quran, Surah 3 verses 38 to 39, this is what it says: "At that Zechariah called upon his Lord, saying, 'My Lord, grant me from yourself a good offspring. Indeed, you are the hearer of supplication.' So the angels called him while he was standing in the prayer chamber. Indeed, Allah gives you good tidings of John, confirming a word from Allah, and who will be honorable, abstaining from women, and a prophet among the righteous." Then in the book of Luke chapter 1 verses 11 to 13 in the Bible, this is what it says: "Then an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. When Zacharias saw him, he was startled and was gripped with fear. But the angel said to him, 'Do not be afraid, Zachariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to call him John.'" The belief at number 4 is about the hereafter and the judgment. Now, some of the verses related to the judgment and the hereafter are as follows. First, looking at the Quran in Surah 3 verses 185, it says, "Every soul will taste death, and you will only be given your full compensation on the day of resurrection. So he who is drawn away from the fire and admitted to paradise has attained his desire. And what is the life of this world except the enjoyment of delusion? Then in the Bible, in Matthew chapter 12, verses 36 to 37, it says, "But I tell you that everyone will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned." Fasting comes in at number 3. We know, of course, Muslims, they're very acquainted with fasting, especially in the month of Ramadan. Now in the Quran, Surah 2, verses 183, we have a passage that says this: "O you who have believed, decreed upon you is fasting as it was decreed upon those before you, that you may become righteous." Now in the Bible, Jesus talks about his followers also fasting at one point, and that's taken from the book of Matthew, and that goes as follows: "Then John's disciples came and asked him, 'How is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?' Jesus answered, 'How can the guest of the bridegroom mourn while he is with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, then they will fast." Coming down near the end of this video, we have belief number 2. This is the belief in prayer. The need to establish prayer is mentioned in the Quran numerous times. We find one of these mentions in the Quran, Surah 20, verses 14. "Indeed, I am Allah, there is no deity except me, so worship me and establish prayer for my remembrance." Then in the Bible, in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verses 12, we have a passage that says this: "Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you." Then to end off this video, at number 1, we have the belief of swearing by God's name. This is pretty much swearing an oath using God's name, and it's frowned upon both in the Quran and in the Bible. And specifically in the Quran, in Surah 2, verses 224, it says, "And do not make your oath by Allah an excuse against being righteous and fearing Allah and making peace among people. And Allah is hearing and knowing." Then in the Bible, in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verses 7, this is what it says: "You shall not misuse the name of your Lord your God, for your Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name." So misusing, swearing by God's name, using God's name in a very meaningless way is definitely frowned upon in both the Bible and the Quran.